alaikum, everyone. My name is Salma Abdurrahman. I'm the Public Service Fellow here at CAIR-Florida, working in the South Florida office. I'm joined by a few special guests today, a familiar face for all of you, inshallah, Brother Abdullah Jabber, who is our Executive Director of CAIR-Florida. And this program is part of our second week of our December Human Rights Month campaign that's happening, led by CAIR-Florida, happening through the CAIR National Federation, alhamdulillah. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the other issues that we're addressing or have addressed this month. The first week, Palestine; second week, religious persecution of Uyghur and Indian Muslims; the third week, Afghanistan; and the fourth week, the rights of incarcerated Muslims, inshallah. So I just wanted to first give Brother Abdullah the chance to introduce to us some of the religious perspective around human rights, how we should be framing this campaign and our conversation for today, inshallah, with our guests from an Islamic perspective. So Imam Abdullah, go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidil mursaleen. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this endeavor from us in the conversation of human rights. We are joining CAIR National and the entire national network in highlighting the issues that are happening here at home, throughout the world, and what CAIR is doing to make a change with your help and support. We have an amazing conversation program for you tonight. Hopefully, we're going to take benefit, we're going to enjoy. But as Sister Selma mentioned, I do want to start off on this note as to, how is human rights related to our faith? How is it related to us as Muslims? I want to start off by saying, etymologically, the word Muslim is an active verb, meaning a Muslim has to be in a constant state of surrender to Allah, a constant state of worship. And that constitutes a continuous struggle or a want to see the world as a better place. So to start off, I want to highlight the fact that when you look at the earliest revelations in the life of the messenger, I'm talking about the earliest revelations of the Quran, specifically in the Meccan period, what we see is the earliest revelations are talking about these egregious human right violations that the Prophet is seeing in his society that has, not only overtaken the Arabian Peninsula, but has really permeated throughout the world. And, in tangent to that, we also see historically the Quran highlights, so does the Bible. And in all of the Abrahamic tradition, what we see is that every noble man and woman, they were sent to address human right violations. So as long as human beings have been on this planet, the conversation has always been relevant. The conversation is even more relevant today because of, in the postmodern world, more specifically, when we have these business conglomerates and these, companies who have monopolized in the business industry. We have governments that control the lives of millions, if not billions of people, as you will hear, that are involved in these egregious violations. It's very important for us to understand and ground ourselves in faith. So to go back, the earliest revelations talk about helping those who are downtrodden, helping those who can't help themselves, helping the yatim, the orphan, helping the widow, helping the female child whose life is being taken at no fault of her own. So when we look at the earliest revelations, we see the Quran addressing human rights and addressing how to uplift people from these silos of oppression and injustice. In addition to that, and let me say this to qualify, this is before the obligation of the 5 times prayer. This is before the obligation of Sawm or fasting. This is before the obligation of zakat or the obligation to give charity, and also Hajj, the pilgrimage. So it's very important for us to contextualize so that we understand how important it is for us to be Muslims that are in a constant struggle trying to make the earth, the world, the society around us a better place. So, when we look at Islam, Islam talks about, and just for example, the freedom of belief. Islam does not coerce individuals into believing in Islam necessarily. In history, we see that it allows and it permits and even respects and honors other faith diversity. So that has always been there, in contrast to popular misconceptions that are out there. In addition to that, when it comes to the basic standard of life, Islam champions, a society that allows access to the basic minimum essentials that's necessary for survival. And I don't want to go into details, but just, I think it suffices to say that the life of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon the Prophet Muhammad, highlights that the struggle and the belief of the Muslims should always be aligned to, working towards a better world. And we live in an age, as I was saying earlier, where this conversation is more pertinent, where we're saying in India, for example, Muslims being persecuted for their faith in a so-called democracy, world's largest democracy to that, as it's claimed, or in our brothers and sisters, the Uyghur Muslims, for their faith in a land that's ancestral to them. And here at home, for Muslims in the U.S., even though the existence and the Muslim experience, more specifically the Black Muslim experience, predates that of the founding fathers, or the founding of this nation factually predates. So, there is a lot to be said. I don't want to take up too much time. I'm going to turn it back to Sister Salma. I just want to highlight the effort that Sister Salma, our Harvard Public Policy Fellow, it's been a blessing to have her with us. And, they've put in tremendous work to put this, tailor these programs. So definitely make dua for our team, and definitely I hope you will take benefit. So I'm going to turn it back over to her to continue on with the program and to welcome our two amazing guests that we have with us in addressing two very important issues that are happening right now around us, so that we can take action, we can be part of that change by the grace of Allah.
Jazakallah khair, Imam Abdullah, for your kind words. And as Imam Abdullah mentioned, we are highlighting two issues today when we talk about a focus on religious persecution for the second week of our campaign. And this is the plight of Uyghur Muslims and the plight of Indian Muslims. And we are joined by two amazing speakers. One of them, Dr. Erkin Sidick, is the president of the Uyghur Projects Foundation. He is also a senior optical engineer at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, mashallah, and we're so honored that he's here. I'm going to go ahead and give Dr. Sidick the chance to introduce himself and his organization and the work that they do, but also give him the chance to talk a little bit about the plight of Uyghur Muslims and some of the violations, the human rights violations they're facing today. So Dr. Erkin, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I was born in East Turkestan in 1958 and finished elementary, middle, high school there. Later on, I went to college also in the capital city of East Turkestan, Urumqi, in electrical engineering. After that, I became a university teacher, went to Japan as a visiting scholar, and I came to US in 1988, and I have been living in the US since then. I joined JPL, NASA Center JPL in 2004, and I'm still working there as a senior optical engineer. The reason that I am doing this kind of activity is I lost a lot of friends and students who have communicated with me by email or Facebook, or who met with me. I went back home in 2006, 7, and 9, 3 years, and I met several thousand students there. All of them are gone. Now, I need to give you a little bit of background what the Uyghurs are going through right now. The Uyghur population before 2017 is about 20 million. But in Chinese official reports, you only hear it is only like 11 or 12 million. The Uyghur population is a top secret in China. Originally, we have been suspecting there's a reason for that. It's a strategy by the Chinese government. Now we learned about that now. Starting 2017, this mass detention of the Uyghur Muslims took place in East Turkestan. And my information that I got from the police official in East Turkestan tells us that about 9 million Uyghurs have been detained, locked up, 9 million out of 20 million. The Western media still says more than 1 million or more than 2 million kind of numbers, but nobody went there and investigated what's really happened there. On the basis, all of those numbers came by guessing, basically. Now, in 2017, in the first round of arrest, the Chinese government arrested very religious people who says that all the good things comes from God, not from Communist Chinese Party. Those are the people in the first category who got arrested. My information tells us that about 2.1 million Uyghurs were transferred to other part of China. And they were used for organ harvesting. You can Google halal organ harvesting, you will get some information. Uyghur people are used as the source of the halal organ transplantation. And some of them are used for bioweapon development experiments, and some of them got mass execution. If anybody in the world go China right now and try to find those 2.1 million Uyghurs, I don't know how many still living there. In East Turkestan itself, the situation is very bad. As I said, the first round of arrest came for Uyghur people who are very religious, who prays 5 times a day, and who have relatives in Muslim countries, kind of people. So we lost about 9 million people, and about more than 1 million of them have died since 2014. Maybe you have heard last Tuesday, Adrian Zenz, representing the Uyghur Tribunal in England, published some documents leaked from the Chinese government, top secret documents, in which the Chinese General Secretary Xi Jinping ordered to persecute the Uyghur people in 2014. This is the result of that arrangement, basically. Actually, he made an arrangement that the Chinese government will kill 1/3 of the Uyghur population, lock up 1/3 of the Uyghur population, and convert the remaining 1/3 of the Uyghur population into automatons who are living in a level of middle ages, basically. This all happened. So the 2.1 million transferred to other part of China, 1.8 million Uyghurs were transferred from concentration camps to prisons in East Turkestan, and about 1 million died. And about more than 800,000 Uyghur kids were separated from parents. And the other aspect of this, the persecution of the Uyghur people are, as I said, the halal organ sale, and also the Chinese authorities built some prostitute center in concentration camps, basically using Uyghur female detainees as a prostitute and making money. And there are human breast milk production, human blood plasma production. It's a very large number. This all, you can find detailed information on this. And the Uyghur hairs were taken. You know that some products shipped to US has been confiscated by the US government. And installing handmen into Uyghur homes without husbands. Basically, the Chinese authority detained the husbands and put Chinese men into Uyghur families to live with the Uyghur wives. The number is very huge, more than 1 million families, as is all documented. And the Uyghurs' natural growth reduced to almost to 0. So Uyghurs' population does not grow anymore. And another very harsh example I want to mention here. On September 13th, Gulzira, one of the camp survivors, testified in Uyghur tribunal in London, and she said one story. The guards in concentration camps threw a Quran into concentration camp cells and forced the detainees to put it in a bucket that the people pee and poop on it. And they were forced to do that. So the degree of the religious persecution came to such a point. The goal here is to eliminate the religious belief completely from Uyghur population. As you know, the Chinese government regards the religion as a poison. And it is not only, this policy is used not only to Uyghur Muslims, but other religious people as well, the native people in China. And so right now, no any religious activity is allowed in East Turkestan. Sometimes when you see when some visitors go to East Turkestan, you see some mosques opened for general public, but they all staged. The people call in on that special day to do praying in a mosque. But in general, it's not allowed. Everything about Uyghurness, including religion, are gone right now. That's the reason we founded Uyghur Projects Foundation in 2019 to preserve the Uyghur culture, language, religion, and the Uyghur identity abroad. That's what we do in Uyghur Projects Foundation. We don't have too much funding, but we try to sponsor small projects that helps to preserve the Uyghur identity abroad. That's what we are doing.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Sidick, for your words and for introducing the issue and the Uyghur Projects Foundation. Inshallah, we'll be discussing this further, but I want to go ahead and introduce our second guest, Brother Zameer Khan, who is the president of the Atlanta chapter of the Indian American Muslim Council. Brother Zameer has a corporate background. He worked as a senior manager at Caterpillar, where he worked for 30 years. He's recently retired from the position and has been serving as the president of the Atlanta chapter of the Indian American Muslim Council. Brother Zameer, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and the Indian American Muslim Council, the issue that you all are working to address, and how you work to address it through your organization, inshallah.
Sure. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Sister Salma, and I would like to thank CAIR for organizing this program. As Sister Salma said, my name is Zameer Khan. I am the president of the Atlanta chapter of the Indian American Muslim Council. I'll briefly speak about the organization, the advocacy IAMC organization, but let me tell you briefly about myself. Like Sister Salma said, I am the president of the Atlanta chapter here of IAMC, and I have a corporate background. I worked for Caterpillar for over 30 years in increasingly leadership positions, and I took retirement about 3 years ago. And I'm currently devoting my time to this advocacy work for Indian Muslims. Brief intro, I know the situation in India recently has been in the news for some time now, so many of the viewers might be familiar with it. India is a big country, just like China. It's a country of about 1.3 to 1.4 billion people. Just the demographics of the country is 80% of the population is, from a religious perspective, or religious or ethnic perspective, are Hindus. Muslims constitute about 15%, roughly 15% of the population. Christians are about 2 to 3, more like 3%, and then you have other Sikhs and other denominations in that 1 or 2%. 15% population of the Muslim is a big number. It's over 200 million. So it's, when we talk about Indian Muslims, we are not talking about a small number of people that will be impacted by any of these human rights violations. In fact, Indian Muslims might constitute second, certainly third largest Muslim population anywhere in any country in the world, maybe second only to Indonesia or possibly Pakistan. So that's big of a country. India has traditionally been a pluralistic democratic country. In fact, most of the people, particularly the American people here, have that impression of India being a democratic and liberal pluralistic society, which is probably true. Historically, the country has been like that. But of late, what has changed, particularly in the last 6-7 years, the present government that came to power, it is a right-wing Hindu nationalist government. And the party, I'll use this acronym terms, BJP, which stands for Bharatiya Janata Party, which is the Indian People's Party, and their ideological parent is the RSS. Again, it's an acronym for a national serving society or a social society that is called RSS. It's a Hindu majoritarian party. There's no secret about it. In fact, you could go on their website and see they don't even make any secret about it. They openly say it's a very old party, almost 100 years old, 96 years old to be precise. And they've been saying this, that this country is a Hindu country. It's only Hindus have a right. All other minorities, particularly Muslims, if they live here, they have to live as second-class citizens. They were, like, when I was there in India, growing up in India, they were a fringe element, didn't get much of the support or the traction. In fact, the Congress party that got the independence for India in 1947, they banned them for their racist ideologies and violence. In fact, the killer of Mahatma Gandhi, who is considered to be the father of the nation, was Nathuram Godse, came from the same party that is in power from the last 6 to 7 years now. So what has changed now is from a fringe element to being in power. That's a big difference. That completely changes. And what has happened in practical terms is that they've systematically gone and changed the nature of the country from a liberal democratic country to a majoritarian base. And particularly in the last 3-4 years, this government is in the second term when they got absolute majority. The first term they won with the coalition, and the second term when they won absolute majority. All the major laws that they have passed have been targeted towards minorities in general, Muslims in particular, whether it is an anti-conversion law targeting the Christians and the Muslims, whether it is beef laws, meaning you cannot consume beef, or suspicion of beef, people are getting lynched, and the personal laws. It's a direct attack on the personal laws of the minority, on the Muslims, that about the issues of talaq or the divorce. So, and then of course the Kashmir issue. They removed the special status that was granted by the Constitution of India. They have removed that. So they've systematically gone and passed these laws which are directly targeted against the minorities, particularly the Muslims. And then the second thing is the taking over, dominating the civil society institutions, whether it is the media, whether it is the judiciary, whether it is the educational system. I mean, reports after reports are coming out how they are systematically going and changing these and dominating these civil societies, with the result that it's very hard to say now India is a democratic country. Sure, they have elections. They have won the elections, no question about it. They rule in 12 of the 29 states of India. But it is definitely going towards a majoritarian state where Muslims will be treated as second-class citizens. Now, there are many, many examples, personal level, heartbreaking examples of how the Indian Muslims are treated, how the lynchings are going on. Hundreds of documented lynchings on the mere suspicion of people either consuming beef or carrying meat that they claim it is beef. and they're doing that with impunity because the government is in power. So the police are completely kind of dominated by this government. So in order to spread this fear among the minorities, they do this. For example, if I give the example of a lynching, they record it and then they post it on WhatsApp, and then the video becomes viral. And the people who are responsible for that, they're openly, claiming that we have done this. And the politicians that are in power from the ruling party, they garland them, they welcome them, and they get bigger positions in their party. So there's absolutely no recourse for them. They're doing that with impunity. Take, for example, Kashmir. Everybody is aware of the Kashmir situation because it is an international situation. It is a UN issue. For 2 years, 8 million people were incarcerated. It was like an open jail in Kashmir. The internet was cut. There was no access to the media right during the COVID. And the personal suffering, the number of military people that are deployed in Kashmir, it's amazing. Nobody is allowed to travel there, so you don't know what is happening there. So these are some of the examples. Now, that is the general situation of the Indian Muslims today, under this fascist and racist-based right-wing government. Now, what is IAMC doing, of which I am part of that organization? IAMC, which stands for Indian American Muslim Council, is the largest Washington, D.C.-based advocacy organization of American Muslims of Indian descent, and with chapters across the country. We have over 23 chapters, just like Atlanta has one chapter. In fact, all the major cities have chapters there. The singular focus of IAMC is to protect the fundamental right and civil rights of all granted by the constitutions of the United States and the Republic of India. That's our singular focus. And being the largest advocacy group, we are involved in highlighting these egregious violations of these human rights to our elected representatives. We build coalitions with our like-minded civil societies and human rights organizations so that we can bear upon the Indian government and particularly our elected representatives. As part of our activities, we have in 2021, this year, we have published a compendium on human rights and presented it to our elected officials in Washington, D.C. to highlight the violations of human rights of Indian Muslims. Not only Indian Muslims, let me point this out, of all the minorities. Of course, Muslims, they tend to be of the favorites of this right-wing group. And we have also sponsored the Indian history series, also working with our academic experts in that area. At the local chapter, we are active. Our local chapter has been in existence since for over 15 years now. We have been involved in meeting with our elected representatives to bring about the awareness of what is going on in India. In fact, one of the impressions that people have in general about the American people also, and particularly so even among the elected representatives. Just last month, I met with one of our congresswomen from our area, and she was almost shocked to hear, we were all presenting her with facts, documented facts, not just hearsay. She said, I was not aware of it. She said, I have a lot of constituents who are Hindus, so her supporters are Hindus, but I was not aware of all these things are going on. So that the impression of the people, and including elected representatives, is very different from the reality on the ground. So we spend a lot of our efforts in educating our elected representatives. We have our congressional briefing sessions that happen every week where we brief our congressional staff. We pick different topics. Just yesterday, it was on the persecution of Christians. We partnered with the International Christian Concern Organization to highlight all the laws that have been passed against conversion and how the churches and have been burnt and the Christian people in India are being harassed. One thing before I close, I would like to clarify one. When I'm talking about these egregious violations of human rights that are taking place, the term that's used is Hindutva. It's very similar to this fascist ideology. When we say Hindutva, this is especially for the benefit of non-Indian Americans who might be listening. We are not against Hindus, or we are not against the religion of Hinduism. What we are against is this political ideology called the Hindutva. In fact, I grew up in India. I stayed in a dorm when I was studying my engineering. I have many friends to this day who are Hindu friends. I'm very familiar with the Hindu culture. It's a great religion. It's a very tolerant religion. What we are against is what this political ideology, what they're trying to conflate Hinduism, which is a very ancient and peaceful religion, with that right-wing ideology. That I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Khan, for your words and for introducing IAMC to us. I will be talking about each of the issues that was discussed in more detail as we move along in the program. And as some of you have seen through our social media posts that have happened over the course of this month, one of the framing documents as we discuss universal human rights is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was proclaimed in the United Nations General Assembly in Paris in 1948. And this document has served as a guiding document in discussions about human rights and sets forth what some of the baseline expectations of human rights are and in discussing human rights violations globally. So we wanted to highlight two of the articles that are part of this conversation. One of them is Article 5 and the other is Article 18. I want to start out with Article 5 and give each of you the chance to talk about maybe things that you haven't addressed, although I think some of this has already been discussed. But just connecting it to the Universal Human Rights Framework, Article 5 reads that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. So Dr. Sidick, I know you talked about this in relation to some of the halal organ harvesting and the bioweapons testing that happens in Uyghur camps in China. But can you tell us a little bit more about how this specific right, where that no one should be subjected to torture, to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, applies to this particular issue?
Yes, one of the main reasons for Uyghurs to be eradicated or transformed into other race is the religion. As I said, the Uyghur people are very faithful Muslims for a long time. Although the Chinese government didn't allow a formal education in religion, like myself, I finished from elementary school into college, all of them in East Turkestan. But I didn't take a single hour of religious course there because the Chinese government forbidden at schools. But Uyghur people still learned the Islam in a private manner, and the people still prayed 5 times a day. Our culture also very mixed with the religion, Islamic culture as well. But for that reason, the Uyghur people kind of separated from the mainstream Chinese. We are not Chinese at all. We are completely different people with strong religious belief. That's part of the reason that Uyghur people are being persecuted like now. As I said, a large portion of the Uyghur population has been eradicated, remaining are being transformed to a race. Basically, China wants to have a single race in China. It's called Chinese race, and eliminate all the other ethnic minority or native groups, including the Uyghur people. But the Uyghur people became the first target because of the strong religious belief. As I said earlier, Uyghur people believe it that all the good things come from God, not from the Chinese Communist Party. That's part of the reason for this persecution. Yeah, that's the brief summary. And last year, I got some info from a friend who talked to a top-level police official working in Urumqi. He came to abroad, and my friend called him and asked about the situation in concentration camps. That police official told him that assume there's a hell on earth, and the situation in the camp is at least 100 times worse than the hell. This is what the Uyghur people are going through right now. The people who are in concentration camps or prisons. The people who are not in concentration camps, prisons, or forced labor factories, they are not allowed to have anything to do with religion. Anything related to religion are not allowed.
Yeah, that makes sense, Dr. Sidick, and thank you for sharing. As we move forward through this, I just want to say, you know, I think so many people are uneducated about both of these issues, especially here in the United States, where these things aren't talked about on a regular basis. So I want us to bring awareness to some of the violations that are happening, and that brings us to discussing this right with Brother Khan about how this right is being violated, the right to not be subjected to torture, cruel or inhuman punishment for Indian American or for Indian Muslims in the Indian subcontinent. And you know, you mentioned some of the lynchings that are happening, and also the existence of the open air prison in Kashmir, but can you go into some more detail or more specific events that have occurred that we should be aware of here in the United States?
Just one example. I mean, like there has been in the last 1 year over 138 custodial deaths or police custody deaths. Overwhelming majority of them are Muslims in India, and these are the official numbers. These are the numbers that have been kind of put out by the government or the police. Now, the actual numbers you can only imagine that's much higher. Now, these are what they call the custodial deaths, meaning people who have been picked up, who have been arrested, have died in police custody. Just a recent example, a young 23-year-old young man by name Altaf was picked up. They went to his house on some suspicion, and they picked him up from his house. His father went with him to the police station, but he was sent back. And next morning, he was dead. And the police, it is almost laughable, the reason they gave as to how he died. They said that he was under depression and he hung himself with the string of the jacket he was wearing. And he hung from a 3-foot high faucet in that cell that he was put in. A 5 feet 10 inch old young man hanging himself from a 2 feet high a pipe or a faucet. I mean, it's beyond. Anyway, that's just one example. And then the body, and then one procedure that they have. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit into the details of this one. They don't even hand over the body to the family, lest the details will come out about the torture marks on the bodies of these people who get picked up. But there was a lot of public pressure, and finally they got hold of the body, and then the mother and the father, they're looking at it and they're showing all the bruise marks on his head, on his body. Clear indication of torture that has taken place. In a 23-year-old, a healthy 23-year-old man picked up on suspicion of kidnapping a Hindu girl. It's never proven to this day even. And he died in custody. Like that, there are hundreds of cases like that. Another very tragic case of an 80-year-old activist, Stan Swamy. He was handcuffed and tied to the bed in the height of the COVID wave that was going on in India in the earlier part of this year, in the middle of this year. There were so many appeals made for his released on health grounds. He was ill. He was 80 years old. He contracted COVID while in detention. Finally, he died with handcuffed. It was so tragic. Many cases like these that has happened. Torture has, and it's not just in India. The police use torture as a routine procedure, even though the laws say that you're not supposed to. Like you mentioned that article, India is a signatory to it, but it's a well-known fact that torture is pretty much given, particularly in these type of cases. Kashmir, you mentioned Kashmir. Kashmir is the only Muslim majority state in India, has a special status. And when they removed that special status for Kashmir, thousands of young kids were picked up. And the tragic part, I mean, it breaks your heart to know that the families don't even know where their children are. The army comes in, picks them up, and that's the last they hear about them. They have no recourse to even go and meet them in prison, and they take them out of Kashmir, they send them out to different prisons if they're still alive. They have no information about, and when they go and ask about the whereabouts, it's a straight denial. They say that, no, he's not there in our system. So months and years have gone by where hundreds, if not thousands, of these young kids from Kashmir that have been picked up with no recourse, with no information about their whereabouts. Hundreds have been summarily executed by the army because there's martial law in Kashmir. So that's one aspect of it. Sister Salma, you mentioned about the lynching. Lynching is like torture. It's for the whole public to see. I must say, especially when most of these lynchings result in a very brutal, cruel way of killing a human being. That's like the ultimate in that torture that is perpetuated. And right in front of the police personnel. Recently, last year, right at the time when President Trump visited India, the Delhi riots took place. Documentary evidence, videos of police working with this Hindu mob, participating together in vandalizing and in hurting Muslims, in committing violence against Muslims. Documented videos. No arrests have been made so far regarding that. In fact, the most common method is when you go and report it, when the police come in, first they go and arrest the victims rather than the perpetrators, because they know that the perpetrators are all well politically connected. So these are, I mean, I could go on and on about these examples of the police torture. It's very, very prevalent. I mean, it's very widespread.
Yeah. And Dr. Khan, I know something that you were talking about in this situation in India is the way that the violations of human rights are happening through the state, really through state actors, police officers, people who are upholding policies and laws. And as we move into the next article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it's a bit longer, so I'm going to abbreviate it and say, Article 18 mentions that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. How is this right being violated in terms of the Indian or the Indian Muslim experience in India? How do policies limit that freedom, and how does the fear that is instilled in Indian Muslims limit the ability to practice the Muslim religion freely?
Is it for me or Dr. Sidick?
Yes, for you, inshallah.
Okay, yeah. On that particular right, I mean, again, I'll give you examples of that. Like when the government passed the CAA/NRC, again, it's an acronym, the Citizenship Amendment Act and the National Registry Act. The people in India protested, particularly the Muslims were at the forefront, and within the Muslims, the women Muslim women, they came onto the forefront. They had that constitutional right to protest peacefully. Now, when they were protesting, they were subjected to all kinds of harassment, even violence against those protesters. Recently, when the people in the Northeast, there was the state of Tripura, northeast of the country, there was violent reports were coming out that the vigilante group, the Hindu right group, were burning down houses of Muslims, the businesses. Some journalists, they went there to investigate. Some judges, advocates, they went there to investigate the cases, and they were arrested under this draconian anti-terrorism law, with the charge being that they had gone there to spread enmity among the communities. And these are the journalists and these are the lawyers who have been arrested on these charges of this anti-terrorism law. Let me tell you about this law. It's called UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. It's a draconian law promulgated to fight terrorism. And there's virtually no chance of you getting the bail. So the police is using this as a weapon to silence dissent, which is given by the Constitution of India. And the process itself is the punishment. What they do is they slap this anti-terror law, put you in jail, and the law is written in such a way that there is absolutely no recourse for bail. Hundreds of people have been arrested under this law, save for one or two people, nobody has gotten even bail. They've been in jail for years now. So the Indian law is notorious for its slow-moving pace. So they know fully well that it will not stand in the court. So, but for years, you just have to fight that law and be incarcerated in that law. Many of the social activities coming from the academia, from the media, from the legal system have been put under these draconian law. That's how they are suppressing the peaceful dissent or right to protest, right to question the laws and the policies of the government in India.
Thank you, Brother Zameer, for sharing that with us. I want to give Dr. Sidick the chance to talk a little bit about the way that this particular right is being violated for Uyghur Muslims as well. Something that I know from my own research is that the Chinese government uses the guise of anti-extremism and religious conversion in their practice of developing these camps and exterminating Uyghur Muslims. So I want to say that in and of itself violates the human right to freedom of religion. But I was wondering if you could give us more insight about that, as well as other policies that are set in place that limits that freedom.
Yes. Several years ago, I think it is 2019, Human Rights Watch documented reasons for arresting the Uyghur people. The Chinese government came up with some reasons or charges, crimes, for which the Uyghur people got arrested. 48 of them, I remember, and about half of them are related to the Islamic religion. It includes, so the persecution, religious persecution is a very widespread right now. For example, the Uyghur people are forced to eat pork, both inside the camps or outside, and they are forced to drink alcohol. The Chinese authorities carried out alcohol drinking contest during Ramadan, last Ramadan and previous year as well. The one old Uyghur man rejected cigarette. Somebody gave him a cigarette, but he said he does not smoke. And he was arrested by labeling religious extremist. So if you don't smoke cigarette, or if you reject alcohol, you become a religious extremists. This is another example. And no fasting is allowed, no praying is allowed, and no Arabic name is allowed. For example, Muhammad, Abdullah. People who have names like this, they all have to change their names into the Chinese name, actually. And greetings, Islamic greetings are not allowed, like Allah, Salam, Assalamu alaikum, this kind of word, not allowed. We used to greet each other when we call, saying Assalamu alaikum or Salam, something like that. No, we cannot use that. The Uyghur people cannot use that in East Turkestan. They are not allowed, all forbidden. Also, there's a lady in Europe, currently living in Europe. She was put in a prison before she came out of China. And she was naked and burned with cigarettes by the police, by the guard, and they told her to call her God to save her. Her body has many tens of burn marks on her body. This is how the guards treat Uyghur Muslims in prison and concentration camps. Just torture them and tell them to call the God to save them. And so the Chinese government eradicated the large portion of the Uyghur population already, and they're trying to convert the rest into a Chinese race without religion. So having any religious belief, faith, are currently is a crime for Uyghur people. That's what's happening in East Turkestan.
Thank you, Dr. Sidick. So as we move forward, I want to give us all the chance to speak about how to get involved, and I'm going to pass it over to Brother Abdullah Jabber to ask you all about the ways that our community, our viewers can become involved in this efforts, inshallah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. By the grace of Allah, may Allah reward you both for not only eloquently, but very detailed talking about the specific violations that are happening. I think it was very well explained. I want to focus on two things, and I'll go back to Dr. Sidick, then come to Brother Zameer. When you look at what your organization is doing, right? So the Uyghur Projects Foundation, Brother Sidick, what is your organization doing right now? And what can people do? What can our audience do? Muslim, non-Muslim, anyone with a consciousness, what can they do to change, to advance, and help?
Yes, thank you very much for asking this question. Let me put the things in a perspective. As I mentioned earlier, we had about 20 million population, Uyghur Muslim population in Turkestan before 2017, and about 9 million got arrested, got detained right now, and more than 1 million died, and the people who were transferred or moved to other part of China, we don't know the fate. Nobody has investigated what happened to the Uyghur people in reality. We have about 100,000 Uyghur population outside the China and outside Central Asia. Another about 300,000 Uyghurs in Central Asia, I was told. These are the total Uyghur population outside the China. So we don't have any hope at the moment about the ethnic identity of the Uyghur people, ethnic religious identity of the Uyghur people in East Turkestan, because China is killing them and also converting the rest into a Chinese race. For that reason, the Uyghur Project Foundation, we wanted to fund some projects that preserve Uyghur language, culture, religion, and ethnic identity abroad. This means about 100,000 Uyghur people. About 300,000 Uyghur people in Central Asia, they have some freedom in preserving their identity, but they are under very strict control of their governments, as you know. Many Uyghur people were returned back to China by the governments of this country. So this 100,000 Uyghur people, we want to preserve the Uyghur language, culture, religion, and identity among these people. So what we are doing is we have a online journal, monthly journal we are publishing in Uyghur language. And we have the video programs, 3 programs in a week in Uyghur language. It has news analysis and a national spirit about Uyghur people. And we are publishing some books about the Uyghur alphabet for kids who are trying to learn Uyghur language abroad. And we made some apps, Uyghur language apps, which can be used for both Uyghurs and foreign people who want to learn Uyghur language. We also given some financial aid to some families in Turkey who have not have the ability to finance their kids' study. They cannot send their kids to school because of the financial hardship. We are trying to help them as well. We operate completely exclusively by donations, and we are a nonprofit organization. The donation is tax-free. So these are the things we are doing. As you know, we are trying to save 100,000 people who are living abroad, because the fate of the Uyghur people back home is very dark at the moment. Where we will end up, we don't know. The international community so far only did the blaming, condemnation, critics, and also some seminar meetings, interview kind of things, but nobody took real action to stop the Chinese government from the Uyghur genocide. It is still taking place. Nothing has changed in China's government's plan in eradicating the Uyghur people. So I don't know how many more years Uyghur people can last in East Turkestan. My estimate is the people who are currently in prisons and concentration camps may live for another 5 to 10 years. Some people got released but died within the first 2 months. And we don't have any substantial number who got released from the camps so far. And the other people, several million people put in forced labor factories. Recently, we made a list on the forced labor factories built by the Chinese government in East Turkestan. The number is more than 14,000. Imagine if there is 100 Uyghurs working in each factory, that means 1.4 million. But the number of the Uyghur workers working there is much more than that. And those people, they sleep in the factories. They are not allowed to go home. They're only allowed to go home once a week, one night, and meet their kids. The kids, all of their kids are put in boarding schools, or separated from the parents completely. They can only meet once a week. If this situation, and also the traditional husband-wife life is gone completely. The Uyghur forced labor workers, male and female, work separately. They don't have a family. So this way, and the condition is so harsh, they work at least like 12 hours a day, and the meal is very bad. On this condition, I am thinking they may live for another 20 to 30 years. And the general Uyghur people, they fed up. A lot of Uyghur people don't want to live anymore because it's so harsh. It's better to die than living. From now on, I think the Uyghur people may only live up to like 60 or 70 years old. So that way, in another 20, 30 years, the East Turkestan becomes a land that no Uyghur people there. This is the current situation. And the international community, including the UN and the European Union or other governments or institutions, didn't take any action. So far, a single investigation didn't take place about the situation in East Turkestan. We don't have reporters on the ground. They are not allowed. Visitors, reporters, investigators, observers are not allowed to go into East Turkestan. So far, there's no single video taken inside the concentration camp. Because there are some reports by the bitter winter. If you look at it, you will understand. Even the police officials who go to a concentration camp has to go through 3 checkpoints. In the first checkpoints, they will be naked and searched. All the phones, cameras, anything were taken away. They can only use walkie-talkie inside the camp. And the police, even the guards, not allowed to talk to each other. Don't mention the camp detainees. This is the situation. Our situation is much worse than Holocaust during the World War II. But the international community, not interested to find out the truth, what's really happening there. So far, nobody went there. So that's the situation. And that's how we are living, the Uyghur people abroad. We all changed. We all have psychological problem. I cannot smile anymore. When I see in a YouTube video about our Uyghur people's dancing, singing, I cry right away. So I don't know, in 5 years later, what will end up in East Turkestan and how long the situation will continue. Another thing I'd like to point out here is that the Uyghur people are very religious, as I mentioned earlier, very faithful to their God, and the nicest, merciful people on earth. And we thought that all the Ummah is our family. When some part of the Ummah got into trouble or like get oppressed, the other Ummah should help. Uyghur people did that during the Palestine-Israel conflict. Even if the Chinese government controlling the Uyghur Muslims so tightly that some people collected donations to send to the Palestinians, for example. During the US-Iraq war, same thing happened. But now, Uyghur people, we are in a situation like this, but we were abandoned. We are abandoned by the Ummah, by the Muslim countries, and by the Turkic countries as well. We are alone. Those countries, the governments of those countries using Uyghur people as a bargaining thing with Chinese government to get financial benefits. So our belief about Islam also changed recently, because what we believe it in so far all didn't happen. We are supposed to be one family. Ummah supposed to be one family. We should work together to fight this oppressor, but it didn't happen. And we were people vanishing right now from the earth like this. So this is a very sad situation. And as I said, we try to save about 100,000 Uyghur people abroad. And one hope that I have to the Muslims around the world, if you could, please help us. We have a wide range of projects we are doing, and basically want to educate the Uyghur people well outside the China, and let's become good Muslims, good students, and become capable people in the future, so that we can continue our heritage, our lineage, our tradition, language, religion, everything abroad. 100,000 people. That's what we are trying to save.
I mean, thank you, Dr. Sidick. I know that was difficult just to kind of recollect and walk through all of that. May Allah continue to give you perseverance, your team perseverance. And, I like one thing that you mentioned, there's areas that we can't help. The international community needs to step in. But there is this area, there is this, a silo that we can help. And this is what they're saying. This is, the 100,000 plus individuals that live outside that we can actually help. We can actually contribute to saving their heritage, language, young children that will actually speak that language, read that language. And that's something that we can all do. So inshallah, we'll have those links so that our audience, the community, the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessing be upon him, we can contribute towards, because this is again essential work to continue a race. And the idea of race as Muslims is divine, because Allah creates race and we complement one another. So the Uyghurs have something to complement and contribute, and they have been, as he was saying, they've been there for the ummah, and it's time for us to be there for them. May Allah enable all of us. So I'm going to turn to Brother Zameer and ask the same question. Please highlight for us, IAMC doing amazing work, chapters in main cities throughout the nation. What are you doing, and how can we help?
Time magazine headlines an article, is India headed towards a genocide of Indian Muslims? And other major publications like New York Times, Washington Post, and even Wall Street Journal, when they are raising these alarm bells about what is going on in India with respect to the persecution of Indian Muslims, it's a wake-up call for all of us. And IAMC, being the leading advocacy group of Indian American Muslims, we are involved in many activities. Some of the ones that I highlighted earlier, the congressional outreach. We have full-time advocacy employees based in Washington, D.C., who work regularly with our elected officials. We work with the academia. We work with our coalition partners in raising awareness and working with our other partners with the Biden administration presently, highlighting it. I mean, we recognize India being a major country with the U.S. certainly has commercial interests and relations with India. We are not opposed to it. What we try to do or remind the Biden administration was to stay true to their own words during the election, particularly President Biden, about making human rights as a major foreign policy tool, whether it is about Indian Muslims or our Uyghur brothers. Use the commercial relationship that the U.S. has with India to leverage that. And we're not asking for anything more than the universal principles of human rights. Hold India accountable and responsible. You have that leverage with India to hold them responsible and accountable for the human rights of all the minorities, Muslims, Christians, and Sikhs there. We recognize, Indian IAMC recognize that the Indian American Muslims have to take the lead in fighting these fascist right-wing forces, both in India as well as here in the US also. But we have to take the lead. So my message to the Indian American Muslims is that if we don't do it, if we don't take the lead, no one is going to do it. Certainly we have a very sympathetic and helping larger Muslim community. They would help us, we know that. But the Indian American Muslims have to take the lead in making, bringing about that awareness among the larger Muslim community. Just to give you an example, just to address that, we in Atlanta recently had in October, October 2 months ago, a meeting, an in-person meeting of the Muslim leadership of Metro Atlanta. And the primary purpose was to bring about the awareness of the larger Muslim community of the human rights violations and the persecution that is taking place of the Indian Muslims. Got a lot of good support there. So my message to our Indian American Muslims is we need to take the lead in highlighting this plight of the Indian Muslims. And to my larger Muslim community, I know they are very generous. They feel for it. They read this. They see that in the media. They would do help us in achieving our goals in fighting these fascist forces. All this work, as CAIR would know, needs a lot of money to do this advocacy work. So please donate to CAIR, to IAMC, all the good work that these organizations are doing. For IAMC, it's simple, iamc.com/donate. In whatever way the larger Muslim community can help financially, that will help us tremendously. That is my message to all the Muslim brothers and sisters.
Well, thank you so much to all of you for your words and your reflections. I wanted to offer up some final reflections that I've been considering and thinking about as we've moved through this program. Something that both of you mentioned is this idea of connected histories and connected presence, that as a Muslim Ummah, all of our struggles are interrelated and interconnected, and that's something that we need to constantly remind ourselves of, that we have a responsibility to a broader Ummah. I want to encourage viewers to do more research and reach out to both of these organizations and other organizations that are doing work on each of these issues about how to get involved, what we can do to raise awareness within the governments and constituencies that we're a part of, but also in the personal everyday choices that we make. As Dr. Sidick mentioned, there are countless studies of where forced labor camps are being used in the products that we may not even know are coming from Uyghur forced labor. And to become aware and take responsibility and boycott when necessary brands that have not demonstrated a responsible production line and a recognition and upholding of human rights, to take that responsibility among ourselves as Muslims in supporting and protecting the rights of Muslims across the globe. And also to tune into our other programs, inshallah. You know, as we have already addressed the issue in Palestine, it's come up a little bit today in our campaign. That was the highlight of last week, alhamdulillah. This week again we'll be highlighting religious persecution. Next week you can tune in to learn more about the issues in Afghanistan on our social media. And then the week after, inshallah, we'll have another program for you about political prisoners and incarcerated Muslims in the US. And so with that, I wanted to turn it back to Imam Abdullah, inshallah, to close us out with a final dua and to offer his reflections as well.
Alhamdulillah. Again, I want to thank our audience, our viewers, for joining us today. May Allah reward you all, and may Allah give all of us tawfiq and divine ability to be agents of progress, to be agents of change, whether it's India, whether it's for the Indian Muslim, the plight of the Indian Muslims, or the plight of the Uyghur Muslims, or anywhere else. But tonight's focus is on the Uyghur Muslim plight and the Indian Muslim plight. I'm very thankful to Dr. Sidick and Brother Khan. Dr. Sidick, again, you and your work with the Uyghur Projects Foundation, may Allah bless you and your team. May Allah take you all from strength to strength. Brother Khan, may Allah bless the IAMC's work in Atlanta and throughout the nation, and may Allah enable all of us to contribute. You know, my thing, again, as Sister Salma was saying, we are connected as an ummah, and we must stay connected. And there's accountability for this with Allah when we definitely will meet our Creator. So with that in mind, the Muslim, again, going back to what I was saying in the beginning, the Muslim is that active verb that we're always in a constant state of submitting to Allah, to our Creator. In that submission, we must always constantly work to see a better world, to be the change that we want to see in the world. So that is part of the Muslim faith. That is part of the teachings of what the Prophet ﷺ, peace and blessings be upon him, did every single day, and that's his legacy. And that's the legacy of every noble man and woman that's mentioned in our faith. So we all have a role to play. We all need to educate ourselves better, right? The Quran advocates and tells us that there has to be that effort, bi amwalikum wa anfusikum. We have to we have to financially help these efforts. We have to, get involved as individuals in these efforts. So every dollar that we spend, be conscious of it, not only because we're going to be questioned for the dollar we spend, but where we spend it. Every dollar that you spend, it's making a decision. It's either advancing justice or contributing to injustice. We have to be more mindful as consumers, especially in the United States. We are the largest consumer in the world. Every article that we read, every video that we watch, every article and video that we share makes a difference. Educate ourselves and also educate others. As both of the honorable guests mentioned, even at the level of legislators and lawmakers, sometimes more often than you think, they're actually oblivious of these egregious violations that are happening across the world, and in which our nation plays a role or could play a positive role. So again, articles, videos, education is very important. Share that. Every conversation that we have with our neighbors, colleagues, Muslim, non-Muslims, whoever they are, have that conversation. You'll be surprised. So many people don't know. So we have that obligation to let others know what's happening to these people. And also every prayer that we make makes an impact in our lives and in the lives of others. So on that note, I'll close with a dua. Allahumma ameen rabbil alameen. Allah, we ask you to accept our discussion today, and we ask you to enable us to take this and use this as a premise and a foundation to advance ourselves as individuals, as families, as communities, to fight injustice wherever it may be, to support organizations and institutions and foundations that are working towards a better world. We ask you to take the Uyghur Project Foundation from success to success, from strength to strength. We ask you to take the IAMC, Indian American Muslim Council, from strength, to continue to inspire their leadership, guide their decisions, and bless their actions. We ask you to bless CAIR here in Florida, throughout the nation, and bless every organization, every individual that supports these amazing organizations that are doing necessary work for a better world. We thank you for the opportunity. We thank you for the blessings. We thank you for your guidance. We thank you for your love and mercy. And we ask you for tawfiq and divine assistance in these steps ahead. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Again, jazakumullah to everyone for joining us today. And again, thank you to Dr. Sidick and Brother Khan for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.